Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If, then, the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money.
In a Wall Street Journal article, Candace Taylor tells us about our fascination with pets these days. She says this: pets these days are living more luxurious lives than ever as humans increasingly pour money into making their properties fetching for non-human family members. For instance, Robbie Timmers went all out, adding a contemporary-style house on his property in Thailand. White with chic black trim, the two-story air-conditioned abode has security cameras, smart lighting, and a sliding door to the porch. Mr. Timmers would have added a swimming pool too, but his wife objected. Her reasoning: it seems unnecessary for the home's intended occupants, the couple's 5 dogs. Mr. Timmers loves his dog's house, but he adds, I have to be honest, my dogs never set foot in the house. He spent about $10,000 on the house. The mini house mostly sits empty. He says it has everything except just no dogs. Then there's Doug the Pug. Have you ever seen Doug the Pug? You can look it up. There are gazillions of pictures of Doug the Pug on the internet. Doug the Pug is a lovable pooch, she says, whose penchant for wearing elaborate costumes has earned him over 1 billion viewers across social media platforms. At the Nashville, Tennessee home Doug shares with his owners, the pug has his own 15-foot closet for his outfits, including tiny cowboy hats, cashmere sweaters, a rainbow of sunglasses, custom harnesses from London, and a Boda Skins leather jacket. Among other perks, Doug also only drinks purified water at home and routinely sees a canine herbalist and acupuncturist. Yeah, things pop into my head on that, and I'm not going to say them, but anyway. What does this mean? Now, not everybody's worried about their pets, right? At least not yet. But what it does tell us is we've got a lot of disposable income to do stuff with as a society. People are putting their money in all kinds of things. So much so that in Europe, they're really tired of tourists. There's more affluence, and there's a gazillions of tourists that go there. I think in Barcelona, there was danger to tourists because the locals were not happy with tourists. So here we have a passage this morning. It talks about money, right? What do we do with our passage this morning? How are we to confront this topic biblically? Because we are not immune to the pushes and pulls of our society where we have disposable income. What are we supposed to do with these things? So what I want to do is I want to talk about 3 things from the passage. The first one is heavenly or earthly treasures, question mark. Is it heavenly or earthly treasures? Number 2, is it light or darkness? And number 3, is it God or money? All right? It just follows the 3 paragraphs. We're just going to work our way through the passage. So heavenly or earthly treasures, light or darkness, God or money. So number 1, heavenly or earthly treasures. There's a principle laid out here. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, verse 19, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. So don't lay up treasures on earth because it won't last, but lay up treasures in heaven where it will last into eternity. So what are treasures on earth? Well, many people want to gather as much money as possible so they can retire early and do the things they want to do, like travel or have experiences, buy nice things or fulfill their bucket list or any number of other things. Treasures on earth is the idea of accumulating as much as possible to make our lives as comfortable as possible. What are treasures in heaven? Well, it is not focused on our own comfort, but we lay up treasures in heaven by investing in God's causes, in God's people. The church, missions, mercy, justice, these are God's causes. So we live frugally so that we have the money to give. That's, in a nutshell, what those 2 things are saying, okay? So before we talk about treasures in heaven, let me talk about what the passage is not saying, okay? Let me talk about what the passage is not saying. Jesus does not ban a savings account or financial planning or private property. The principle is that we don't want to be a burden on those around us. We certainly don't want to be a burden on our kids or whoever might have to take care of us in older age. The Bible praises the ant for storing the food in summer that they will consume in winter. And the Bible also tells us that he who does not take care of his family is worse than an unbeliever, okay? So it involves careful planning. It involves careful financial planning. Jesus is not saying you don't plan for the future. But this passage really isn't about money at all. It's about the heart. This is what this passage is about. Verse 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. It's about what you set your affection on, because this is going to determine where you spend your money. I had an uncle, my mom's sister, Bob Gray. I'd love to have that name. Mark Auffarth, that's A-U-F-F as in Frank, A-R-T-H. And now I live on Suffolk Downs Way, that's S-U-F-F-O-L-K. I have to spell this for everybody that calls on the phone. But if I could just say Bob Gray, I don't know why I'm telling you that, but it just occurred to me. What a great name, Bob Gray. All right, never mind. My uncle, Bob Gray, great guy. As much as you can elevate a human, he had his mind set on gathering treasures in heaven. When my grandfather was building a barn, when they were kids, he was in high school. He would go out and lay brick for an hour before going off to high school every day. He'd get up at 5 a.m. and he'd go out and lay brick for an hour. This is the kind of guy he was. He was very industrious. That was that generation too. When the Korean War came along, he went into the army and he was ahead of the front lines as a warning to the front lines, and he thought he would die any day. He was out there for 6 months, trusting in God. He came back, he went to college, and he got a degree in mechanical engineering, and he got a job with Scott Paper Company. And he rose in the ranks of Scott Paper Company. He rose very high to the point where they would send him overseas for months at a time to start a plant from scratch. He would go there, he would hire the workers to build the building. He would hire the leadership that would hire the rest of the plant workers. He would do it from scratch. This is what he did. It was one of his big jobs. very high up in the company. I'm sure he made a lot of money. I'm positive he made a lot of money. But he never moved out of his 4-bedroom split-level house. Not a real big house. Never moved out of that. He stayed in that house, same bedroom, in a modest neighborhood in Wilmington, Delaware. He was a ruling elder in his church, and you didn't have to talk to him very much to know he wasn't going to talk to you about Scott Paper Company. It was almost like he didn't care about Scott Paper Company. He wanted to talk about his church, and he wanted to talk about what God was doing in his church. It was always ministry or theology. He always had it on his mind, so much so that when he retired at 62, he took an early retirement at 62, and he went to Westminster Seminary and got an MDiv and became a pastor and became an assistant pastor at his church. He was so excited about what was going on at his church that he wanted to be a bigger part of it. So he left all that world. He didn't need a salary. He had plenty of money. I know he was very generous with missionaries and with pastors. When Ann and I decided to go to seminary, I talked to him about it, and he said, "Oh, I'll pay for it." And he gave us $10,000 a year, which paid for my tuition and books and other things, computer and other things like that. And when I finished seminary, we went to Chile and we had to raise some support. He kept that $10,000 going. He probably invested well over $100,000 in Ann and me. This is what he was about. Uncle Bob wasn't perfect, but he was a big example to me of putting your money where your ministry heart is. My parents were another example. They always tithed to the church, and then they tithed to missionaries. They did another tithe out to missionaries. They didn't have a lot of money, but they did. They put their money where their mouth was. See, I think this is what Jesus is talking about. The principle is this: will you put your money in the things, you will put your money in the things that your heart loves. So my question this morning is, what does your heart love? What does your heart dream about? What are you scheming or planning? This is where you will spend your money. Is it earthly or is it heavenly? Point number 2, light or darkness. So as we look at our passage, it suddenly talks about our eyes and light. And what does this have to do with anything? It almost feels like he changes the subject on us. Verse 22, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? Well, if you look in Scripture, look at there's verses in Psalm 119 that seems to use heart and eyes interchangeably. In Psalm 119, verse 10 says, "I seek you with all my heart. Do not let me stray from your commands." Verse 18, "Open my eyes that I may see wonderful things in your law." Verse 36, "Turn my heart toward your statutes and not toward selfish gain." Verse 37, "Turn my eyes away from worthless things. Preserve my life according to your word." So the heart is the seat of everything in a person, but it is through the eyes that we perceive things that are in the heart. They are right there together. Your heart is influenced by what you see with your eyes. So they're really pretty much interchangeable. So no, Jesus is not changing the subject, but he's just showing us a different view of the issue at hand. What he's saying is that a healthy eye is an eye that sees what's behind the issue of money. It can perceive the motive of the heart that is behind the issue of money. It's not just money here or money there. And believe me, we are good at that. we don't even think about it. We spend money like anything. But the eye is the one that sees what's going on behind the sin, beneath the sin, the heart issue. It's not just the external eye, but the eye is the gateway to your heart. And we'll be looking at that in the next point. But it all comes down to our affections. What are we after? But first, I want to look at the deception that we see all around us. It appears as light, but it really is darkness. 2 Corinthians 11:14 says, even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. He knows that real light is important, and so he disguises himself that way in order to deceive us. So let's talk about commercials for a minute. Advertisers have zeroed in on this. Have you noticed that they rarely talk about a product anymore? They are selling you an identity. Let's watch this commercial.
You can't be demanding. You can't be relentless. You can't put yourself first. So, put yourself first. You can't be confident, so be confident. You can't challenge, so challenge. You can't dominate, so dominate. You can't flex, so flex. You can't fill a stadium, so fill that stadium. You can't be emotional, so be emotional. You can't take credit. You can't speak up. You can't be so ambitious. You can't break records. You can't have any fun. You can't make demands. You can't keep score. You can't stand out. Whatever you do, you can't win. So win.
Lord, I love it. You can't win, so win. How? Buy Nike. Buy Nike. If you're a female and you don't feel empowered, be empowered. How? Buy Nike. You see what I'm saying? This is what they're after. They're after your money to sell you an identity of who you are. It's not sneakers or sportswear. It's on narrative, resilience, overcoming stereotypes, female empowerment. It's about what the brand stands for, not what the brand is. If you buy Nike, you'll be connected to a larger movement. Don't you want to be part of a larger movement? The Nike gear is only a symbol for something far greater. You need to join the far greater team that we have here at Nike. And at the same time, they make billions of dollars. This is not an honest ploy. It's not true. It's just not true. Just because you buy Nike sportswear doesn't change you. There is no change that happens with that. See, brothers and sisters, the deck is stacked against us. The promise is that if we use our money to buy this or to buy that product, it will give us the purpose or the joy or the status or the fulfillment, or it will make the statement that makes us significant. This is what's being sold to us. They're selling us an identity, and it's working. We're buying, we're drinking the Kool-Aid. It looks like a bright light. It really looks bright to us, but it's actually what verse 23 says. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? They're selling what looks like a bright light, but it's actually darkness because they can't deliver on the promise. Money can't buy you any of this. It's really just barking up the wrong tree or going down a blind alley, or there's a mess of those. Why can't it? Why can't buying Nike provide you with the empowerment that you need to win or to be good? Well, let's look at point number 3, God or money. Here's why it leads to nowhere. Verse 24, no one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Now we get to the real issue, and it has to do with who we are serving or what we are serving. If you're buying into the identity that money can buy, then you're not serving God. Jesus he's consistent in his teaching that money is dangerous because it threatens to change our hearts after its own image. If you have money, you have all kinds of possibilities in life, and it feels good to be financially solvent. That feels really good. It's like the man who had so much that he built bigger barns so he could just enjoy, eat, and be merry. This is what his philosophy was, and that very night God took his life. We love to be financially solvent because it feels good. It feels like we can take a load off and not worry. After all, we have money in the bank, and then we're okay. We're going to be okay. The book of Ecclesiastes says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. In Dickens' novel, A Christmas Carol, I'm sure you're all familiar with that, Scrooge had a business partner named Bob Marley, and they were obsessed with making money. They don't care about anything or anyone. What they want to do is make money. And then Bob Marley dies, but Scrooge keeps the same pace. Well, you know the story. One night, Scrooge is sitting there, and suddenly the ghost of Bob Marley appears to him. And Marley, who sees beyond the grave, who sees what this all actually is, tries to warn him. This is what he says: I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you, or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? He asks Scrooge. See, what Marley had pursued all of his life had become utter slavery. It was the thing he was serving, and it had enchained him. See, that's the thing. You want to talk about God or money? Which one is the better master? That's what we need to look at. What Jesus is telling us here is that money is every bit as much of a god as God himself. One of our cultural idols is money. If you get money, you can get all the glitz you want. You can get all the power you want. You just bow down to the almighty dollar. Get as much as you can and use it in self-service. But just understand that if you give yourself to this idol, you will have no room for God. And it will never give you what you think it will. It will never be enough. It will enslave you. It can ruin you. It can bring slavery to desire. You never have enough. It can bring slavery to fear. When you depend on your wealth, you're afraid of losing it. And that's only one stock market crash away from reality. It can bring slavery to appearances. You must keep up appearances for that reputation. It can bring slavery to power or control, the pursuit of enough money to control your circumstances, and on it goes. If you bow down at that idol, it will enslave you. Bob Dylan was right. You're going to have to serve somebody. It may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. What Jesus is saying is that to serve money is darkness, and to serve money, you are actually serving the devil. So how do we get free of this? Given that it's pounded into us by every commercial and almost everything we see on social media, imagine that you lost everything. How would you feel? It'd be then that we would know how much our possessions mattered to us. There was a missionary couple to Asia, and they had put all of their things on a ship. They hadn't boarded yet, and the ship caught fire with every possession they had, and the ship sunk. And the wife says, "What are we going to do?" And the husband says, "They're only things. They're only things." How do we cultivate a heart desire for the kingdom of God? How do we cultivate a radical generosity towards the things of God? Thomas Chalmers, the most influential Scottish theologian of the 19th century, in his book, The Expulsive Power of a New Affection, says this: the only way to dispossess the heart of an old affection is by the expulsive power of a new one. You can't force yourself to stop worrying or thinking or be enslaved to money. What we have to do is to develop a new affection. And what is the new affection? It's Jesus. It's Jesus. 2 Corinthians 8:9, for you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you by his poverty might become rich. Generosity is the essence of the gospel. Jesus is the standard for generosity. How generous was he? Well, he gave up everything, including his life, for our sakes. He died because we worship at the altar of money. He paid the price for us. And the call of the gospel is to give up ourselves for his sake. To develop a new affection is to spend time thinking about him, thinking about what he's done, actually putting yourself in his shoes and saying, would I have done? I would have never done that. That Jesus would give up everything. And he promises we will be rich. Well, there are a lot of ways to define rich, of course. It's not in the sense of the prosperity gospel that he will make you wealthy here on this earth. He does make some people wealthy. Most people won't be, although we're all very wealthy. But it's a wealth that we can't even imagine. You know what we get? See, the real wealth is that we get him. This is the essence of the gospel. He becomes our new master, and his yoke is easy, and his burden is light. He is tender, he is gentle, and he is humble, and he has our best interest at heart. There is no greater master to serve. The glitz of money may look great on the outside, but you got to see with your eyes and see behind it that it will only enslave us. But Jesus, which looks like suffering and the way of giving up of ourselves and of dying to ourselves, is the only way of actual freedom, where his yoke is easy and his burden is light. We come and we trust him with all that we are, especially with our money. We throw it on him, and we're generous. As we've already read in the Sermon on the Mount, our left hand doesn't know what our right hand is doing. We don't give the things so that we feel better. We give for Jesus' sake. See, and this is freedom. It's actually freedom. And he's preparing a place for us. In the words of Jim Elliot, the martyr to Ecuador, he is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Who would take him seriously this morning? Jesus on a cross is how seriously he takes us. That's the gospel, and it changes everything. Let's pray.